Ladies and gentlemen, you are hereby notified that there will be a regular meeting at the Board of Education School District number 40 at 6 p.m. Please have a roll call.
Audrey Adamson.
Here.
Justin Anderson.
Present.
Ted DeSmet.
Here.
Kate Schaefer. Maria S. Trigueros.
Here.
Andrew Ware.
Here.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Here. Is right for the
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the open session of the regular board meeting of education meeting of May 10th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Second. Any opposed? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, there's no communication, public comment, or participation. All right. Dr. Preble.
Any objection? Taking that?
Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, well, good evening. I'm excited to be standing in front of you tonight to present the 2021 Facility Committee recommendations. First off, let me give credit where credit is due. The committee included a balance of members that represented business partners, parents. We had residents and several employee groups of the district. In all, we had 17 members of our committee. Even with COVID restrictions and limitations in full effect, we were able to have 5 productive meetings, and we're able to vary the locations so that we could give the committee some insight on some of our buildings. I want to recognize and thank those members for giving up time for our school district to help come up with our recommendations. We have Dan Smith, Dr. Savage, Tom Ferguson, Liz Hernandez, Michelle Timer, Hannah Etheridge, Dina Parker, Chris Etheridge, Scott Fournier, Brooke Hendricks, Anders Brudd, Jelena Heng, Rebecca Jordan, Alan Anderson, Mike Winnekamp, and Joseph. I just want to reiterate that this was just an awesome committee, and these members worked so hard to utilize our 5 meetings most efficiently as possible, and they did a great job. So first off, I want to talk about understanding the process of the committee and what we did, the process we did and we followed, because it's important for us to review that, the purpose and goals. So first, we took time to review all existing building updates. Dan Smith and his team provided building profile sheets to the committee for each building with all major updates in a timeline format. Second, we considered future needs. This step included a dive into previous committees' work. We reviewed the 2008 Strategic Plan Facility Committee Study and the 2010 Facility Committee Study to gain a complete understanding of their previous works and recommendations. The 2008 plan was the first major update since 1990 Facility Task Force report. The 2008 committee came back together in 2010 because of the decision to move 6th graders to the middle school. At that time, changes were made, and until now, the 2010 plan was the active guidance our district has been following. Third, our committee wanted to give input to stakeholders and gather feedback to make sure we engage our whole community. Our committee has great representation of our community, but tonight is the first step in engaging all stakeholders. Through this presentation, along with plans for holding informational meetings this fall, we will, I will talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation, but we want to have full transparency in these recommendations in the committee's work. The fourth goal was to create a current or revised executive summary that this board could use to help support future decisions for our district. I use the word revised because we had a strong foundation to start with. The work of the 2010 committee really laid the roadmap for us. As a matter of fact, Alan Anderson and Scott Fournier, our current committee members now, they served on that committee, and they provided us valuable insight to why the previous recommendations were made. So now let me share with you a brief rundown of our district, along with a collective summary of the buildings and dates they were built. Our current enrollment is over 7,000 students. We have 1,100 employees. Our district has 10 elementary schools and 1 high school, and currently 1 alternative school, and we have 1 preschool. We have a standalone field house at Wharton, and Allendale is our current administration center. We are a very diverse district. We have 55% of our families are qualified for free and reduced lunch. We have over 1,000 students that are English language learners, and we have 1,000 students with various special needs. Our student population consists of 60 different languages, and we use the acronym PACE, which we use for setting our district goals, which stands for People, Achievement, Community, and Environment. We are the 26th largest district in the state of Illinois out of 859, and we are the largest in our region. Here's a brief overview of the newest and oldest buildings in our district. As you can see, Bicentennial is newest, 1977, and Willard is our oldest. At our first meeting in January, this slide here, an overview of our current and recent current projects, actually changed a little bit. Since then, since January, we have added the MHS Aspire, along with the additional 6 buildings that we plan on adding HVAC to over the next 3 summers. As you can see from this slide, we have much to be excited about for both our past and future. Here's a visual of some of those projects. During the review of the 2010 study, our committee determined what is still applicable and combined that with a fresh set of priorities to help in making our recommendations. I'd like to share with you those priorities. The committee felt first and foremost that the top priority is addressing student needs. With limited funding, student needs must be addressed prior to the needs of aging facilities. Equitable learning environments are a must for all students, regardless of where they live in our district. Our current elementary buildings have inequitable learning environments. This committee believes that future schools should be flagship learning centers for all students in our district. We reviewed the past committee's recommendations and decisions about multi-section schools. We are referring to multi-section elementary schools that have 3 or more sections per grade level. I'm going to talk more in detail shortly about why previous committees and our committee prioritize this concept. We focused on the importance of building locations and their sites. We wanted to provide this board and future boards of education considerations to purchase surrounding properties as they become available. We have included a slide that I will show you momentarily that visually lays this out for you. Bottom line is we want to make sure our families have equitable access and proximity to their schools. As a committee, we did not focus on what future buildings should look like or how they should be constructed. And our recommendations are not in any particular priority order, okay? We focused on those past recommendations, as I mentioned, of the 2010 committee, recommending larger elementary schools, 3+ sections. And this committee felt compelled to make sure we explain the why. Why are 3-section elementaries recommended? So I want to share that with you here in this slide. As you can see, we have some of the advantages that were discussed is smaller class size, pooling of resources, which is essential now, and when we have limited and constricted budgets. Teacher collaboration is improved. The elimination of split classrooms. We see more parental involvement. We have less barriers for scheduling, especially at the elementary with specials. Our specials currently have to change buildings. They lose valuable time in that transfer, and it just provides for a non-ideal situation sometimes. But we can provide more courses with multiple sections, and we can offer more extracurriculars, and we can utilize our space more efficiently. It allows for our buildings to be more diverse, and overall, we're just more operational efficient. Again, I want to reiterate, this committee wanted to make sure our community and our stakeholders understand why that 3-section elementaries is one of the recommendations we'll talk about. Now let's look at our current map of our district, and we call this the quadrant map. And this is a nice map because as you look at it, it separates our district, Moline and Coal Valley. If you see on the bottom there, you have the Rock River and you have Bicentennial. And then it divides it by 74, which, and John Deere Road and the Avenue of the Cities. Those are our big boundaries. And this just gives you a visual right now of our current layout. And now the moment you've all waited for. Who's got the drum roll? Okay, the 2021 Facility Committee recommendations. Disclaimer. Okay, these are recommendations for long-term projects and land acquisition decisions. There's no financial commitment, and these recommendations do not prevent present or future boards of education from rejecting or making revisions for future decisions. Number one, continue current operations at existing sites, Bicentennial, Hamilton, John Deere, Wilson, and Moline. These sites are all updated and we feel the operations continue as planned. Number two, make strategic decisions for future preschool and elementary schools by utilizing the following sites. Butterworth School building and site becomes a multi-section flagship building. Acquiring of more land is recommended. Coolidge and Roosevelt site becomes a multi-section flagship building. Jefferson School building and site remain as a preschool building. Acquiring more land is recommended. Lincoln Irving School building and site becomes a multi-section flagship building. Acquiring more land is recommended. Washington School becomes Washington School building and site becomes a multi-section flagship building. Acquiring more land is recommended. Number three, consider providing busing throughout the district for all students living a set distance from schools.
Next.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. Did you catch up there with me? Sorry. Number four, consider future use of Jane Addams and Franklin properties for preschool and other district uses. Number five, Allendale, Logan, and Willard should not be programmed for future use and sold when vacated from current use. Number six, consider demolishing of Coolidge building once we have relocated facilities. And that goes along with the one before about Coolidge and Roosevelt using that. So now when you think about these recommendations and you visualize the map that we had before, the quadrant map, the new map looks like this. And you can see we've highlighted Franklin and Adams. Can you go back? Yes, you want, yep, go back to one, no problem.
Sorry.
Right there. I actually had, okay, which one you want to go with? This one?
That's, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's what that looks like. So the one piece here that I want to mention is we have a completed executive summary. All right. And it provides a great overview of the committee's work and everything I just talked about. That summary will be available to you. And wrapping up this presentation tonight, I want to close with our thoughts on community engagement moving forward. So we believe in full transparency and providing our community and stakeholders full access to this committee's work. We have created a page on the district website with the links to all 5 of our meetings and the presentations. This presentation tonight will be there, and also our completed executive summary. That is live right now under our facilities tab, and we are planning on putting that out on our Facebook available so our public can access it, and sending that out maybe through Remind so people have access to it. Prior to this committee and the committee's work before, all of our information was in a 3-ring binding, which you could come and view at Allendale if you'd like. So we really believe in full transparency, and we want to put that out there so people can see it, and that work, make it as visible as possible so our stakeholders can really understand the recommendations that we've set forth. We plan on holding some community nights in the fall to inform and gather feedback. I think the key word is inform, because this committee's work and the thought and the process that we went through and the past committee's work, these recommendations, there was a lot of thought process in helping guide future decisions for our district. But I really want to just, go back to that our committee members worked really hard on this, and I don't know if any of them are online right now, but if any of them want to add anything, feel free to do so or make any comments. I want to thank our members, and I want to thank Dave here, McDermott, for providing that, just some of the insight that he had during this process. He was instrumental in bringing in some of the past discussion of the past committees as well. And I just want to thank all of you for allowing us to present here tonight. And I wanted to open up for questions at this time.
I just have a question regarding, so when this goes live, then you're gonna have people with lots of feelings about many of the things. Like, I can look at this rationally, but I also live half a block from Logan, so I also have ties to that, but at the same time, I understand, I've been in that building enough to know how old it is and hard to maintain and other issues. So what is the, I guess, plan district-wise of, if you're not having community conversations until fall about this, you're going to start getting, I'm sure, potentially some feedback about it sooner than that. And so just wondering, I guess, how we're engaging in discussing.
That's a great question, because this is a long-term plan. And we're not talking about acting anything out on this plan relatively soon. It's guidance.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at the plan and the recommendations, that's one of the things that we want to talk about, because when you're talking about your individual school, that's personal.
Yes, it is.
But at the same time, the committee was tasked at looking at the bigger picture, knowing that resources are limited, and looking for operational efficiencies, looking for best practices and how we can serve our students more equitable. And that's that balance between what's personal and the big picture. And I think that's the piece when we talk about information gathering and sharing that information with stakeholders. There's a part of it that it's not just a survey where you think, well, should we keep this building open or not? It's explaining the process, explaining those operational efficiencies, and educating, and at the same time gathering some feedback, because we're just one committee. We worked really hard, but there may be some other ideas out there that we could consider. And I think that process will take shape. But I think it's definitely, we're talking about a marathon, not a sprint on any single recommendation on this plan.
We can add a little bit more of that timeline and communication
That's what I'm thinking.
so that people understand. I mean, clearly, we're doing HVAC for the next 4 years. So we want to make sure that when the board decides that it's time to dig into this further, start looking at some community feedback this fall, that they understand that this is, as Dr. Tribble said, a long-term vision, and no decisions or changes would be anticipated in the short term because of the projects that are currently slated and the deadline for use of the ESSER money. Everything got bumped back.
So I'm gonna reiterate that to the community and anyone who's listening. I think it's very, very important to not panic and to ask questions and understand that this isn't something that's happening in the next month, the next 6 months, the next year, or even the next 2, as far as we know. And I encourage the community to be present now, and instead of when these decisions are going to be made down the road, but that no one needs to panic, and we're willing to listen, and it is personal. As someone who has been in a building that was closed and a 1-section building, I do know. And if you're a teacher or a parent or a community member that's connected to a building, it's your heart, you love it. But no one here tonight is saying that next year your child is not going to be in school again. So everyone in the community, okay, take a deep breath.
Yes.
I just had some questions about like the technical information that was, like, the information that was used to come up with these ideas, like, so I saw that to sell Allendale, Logan, and Willard, that was a recommendation. Are there like, were there like market studies or like, how were those chosen to sell versus like tearing down?
I would say that, looking at the land available and what we did is we looked at the land at the various sites and then the possibility of expansion. And then,
These sites, obviously, clearly, I mean, you look at them, they're not
Yeah.
expanded, but like the feasibility of selling them to a developer, also, those considerations have to be made to the developer, right? So
yes,
I have some concerns about those buildings ending up sitting empty, right? Because I also happen to live fairly close to Logan. And also like a resource like Coolidge here is a big building and is, I mean, it's decrepit and falling down, but it might be attractive given its size to a developer. So were those considerations made?
you know, and
Can I help you, Brian?
yeah, go ahead.
I can interject a little bit. Some of the biggest difference between the 10 study and this study was really the discussion about Coolidge. And there was one major thing that was decided since then, is this board took action to move the alternative kids out. So that freed up this building. So there was discussion of, if you're taking expansions, sometimes what we learned at Hamilton, you had to move the Hamilton population out into another school while you added on that for a year. Well, with Hamilton, it was rather simple because there was only 106 kids in there. So you could absorb them into Garfield and build onto there, where the concept with this is if you demoed it or thought differently, you could have a site where you build a new flagship school on this corner base, and then you wouldn't have to displace kids for a while. And then you could decide what you do with Roosevelt or Logan. That's part one of the question. So that was a major difference because this board took action, and that was a lot of discussion. The other thing I would say to you is this community, at least the last 20 years since we've been building onto our properties, we've been extremely successful in repurposing our unwanted buildings. Now, does that mean we can do that in the future? Who knows? But we worked with the city for a long time on the Garfield to try to get that. You know, might have even said when we were in that negotiation, hey, there's a sister school just like Garfield. And that same thing could be here, but there are options there. And I think that the committee's charge wasn't so much that to do those studies until we get to that point. This took a lot of energy to get to this point, where that's a very good question and a very good discussion for another committee to see how detailed we want to get. But I think we can demonstrate what past boards have done to successfully repurpose buildings that they have vacated in the last 20 years.
Right, I mean, and then I have some questions about like Jefferson, like, is that land the best suited for building on because of the issues there, the water table issues?
The discussion that was really intense in the 2008 study was square footage per student, square footage acreage wise. And that was a lot of the discussion that Alan Anderson and Scott Fournier could share with us. And then I got in after the fact. I wasn't on that committee either. But there was a lot of discussion on that. A lot of it, are we landlocked? Whereas Jefferson, we have some property behind Jefferson. And also the park is behind Jefferson. So we're getting out there a little bit. But if we built a new school on a new property, and I'm not saying we do, because we have no open land in Moline, a little bit in Coal Valley. But you need a referendum to pass and a lot of things like that. So if you take your existing building like a Hamilton, you don't have to do that. So there's some interest in when you expand, where you're gonna expand or build on. But Jefferson, the difference between the 2010 study and the 2021 study, Jefferson was gonna be an elementary building. And they were gonna repurpose one of the other small buildings to preschool. So what might have come up a little bit in this committee's discussion is, where is preschool gonna be in the next 5, 10, 20 years? Just like kindergarten started out where it wasn't required, and then it was halftime only, and still in school code, it's still only halftime only. But now there's a push early on that preschool for all. Now, does that mean 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds or whatever? So that's why this committee recommended, hey, there might have to be maybe more than one school in a preschool. So that's a difference. I would say yes, Franklin, or yes, in the end, I would think on the information I know, even though the water table is high just because of that, redoing the parking lot, I think Jefferson's a very doable location because the surrounding land allows for it. So that was a lot of the discussion. I'll say there was a lot of discussion in this committee as well as in past committees of, do you do Butterworth or Adams? Very similar. But the reality is the usable land around Butterworth is much more usable than the ravine we own behind Adams. So that was a logical stuff. We were fortunate, the other committee spent a lot of time developing that, and this committee didn't feel the need to reevaluate that because the belief was still there. That doesn't mean the board doesn't have a choice to do that in the future.
I want to say briefly, I support the forward thinking about preschool, because I do believe that is going to be something that is continue to grow in state desire or even law. So I think that is a very wise thing to anticipate. And my question is, I'm having a hard time picturing Washington, when you're saying buying land, like I don't see where you would in Washington, because so help me, someone.
To the east, we own one of the lots to the east.
Oh, okay.
I believe, so where the water tower is at in that lot,
Okay,
and then the idea would be, is I think, to acquire the next couple buildings, if that's the direction.
I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
Any other questions and concerns?
I said regarding, so as we kind of spread people out and they're less neighborhood schools, as we have the multi-section thing. I know people have always, busing comes up all the time, and busing was part of that conversation. And that it was always students were within that realm, there were busing did not make sense financially and for other reasons for the district. Do we have an idea of how many students then would be in sort of a more of a busing sort of realm within the new sort of center sort of area? That are outside of, I can't remember what the distance is, that typically
Mile and a half.
Mile and a half. So how many students now, right now, very few students live a mile and a half away from their elementary school. How many students in this town would live that far away from their elementary school?
Well, and so we didn't run the numbers on the breakdown of that. We kind of used the water map to visualize that and to approximate.
Okay.
And Dave, you want to add anything on that?
To give you when we redistrict the boundaries from the Hamilton, when you really think about what we did, not many school children in that reorganization were affected where transportation would be available. Meaning most of the kids live within a mile and a half. If you think of our district as a whole, almost all the elementary kids live within a mile and a half. Maybe Coal Valley is different, but then when you jump to middle school, it's a whole different game. And when you go to high school, obviously a lot are. So this isn't, if you just let me go maybe a little bit. Washington and Franklin, you say you combine those two schools, there's not a lot of population in Franklin that's below the hill. So you're probably not gonna affect much transportation in there if we did offer it. There's not many high-risk roads or railroads there. So you're not gonna, you could do that and not affect a lot. I'm not saying it's easy on parents. I'm not going in there. I'm just saying the eligibility of transportation isn't gonna serve a lot of those issues. So, but whereas if you do Jane Addams, you might, because to Butterworth, you have a high dangerous road against, with John Deere. You know, we had a lot of debate about Logan when we rebound, because we took, for the first time, kids that were on the Rock Island side 74 and made them part of Logan. So you're gonna have all these pockets everywhere. We did not study that in this term or in the last facility study. But obviously, once you get to a goal like this, transportation is gonna probably be a big issue.
Thank you.
And that the transportation language, the busing, was directly taken off the last study. So that tells you it's been on there.
It's been, I know.
Yes, yeah.
We also took into consideration that bulk of our preschool students do qualify for transportation. So if we added an additional site in another quadrant, in another location, it would impact these students, because most of those students are bused.
I appreciate the taking the marathon approach and looking long-term for guidance rather than order decision-making and binding the hands of future folks that sit in these chairs. The other thing I very much appreciate is the transparency, putting it all online.
Yeah.
Giving the time. Yeah, it sounds like the fall is a long ways away, but with all this to learn, to have the real informational back and forth and conversation that we want to have, that you're describing, folks in the community need, and we don't need that time to dive in and study, to have such a conversation. So that it's that easily available, not just a binder in one building that everybody's got to come to, and that easily accessible. Appreciate it.
Well, I think what Dave mentioned too is, you know, we wanna, if we do a transition in the future, we wanna make it as smooth as possible for our families. No one wants to be uprooted out of their home school. And, you know, that option, for example, with what we did with Hamilton and Garfield, but, you know, now that Coolidge is open, that provides an opportunity to literally build a school without uprooting anybody and then have a phase-in plan. So that planning and that communication just feels, as a committee, was just absolutely important to make sure that we're transparent throughout the process. And then as this board has future discussions, this plan will be available, and it, you know, hopefully down the road, we'll meet again, and there may be future updates. Who knows? I mean, we got all the ESSER money to do the HVAC project, and, you know, do we get more money in the future that could expedite this plan or help us move forward with something different? So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Phillips, thank you so much.
yes.
And all of those who worked on this. We appreciate it. This is important work, and I know it is difficult work. All right, number 6 is the consent agenda. We do have an item hold, so we will be going to. So the first one, Board of Education approve the actions contained in consent agenda items A through O and Q and R as presented. I have a motion, please. Second. Any discussion? A roll call, please.
Justin Anderson.
Aye.
Chet Smith. Aye. Maria S. Trigueros.
Aye.
Andrew Ware.
Aye.
Audrey Adamson.
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Aye. The Board of Education approved the actions contained in the consent agenda item P as presented. Do I have a motion? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chet Smith.
Great.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Aye.
Andrew Ware.
Aye.
Audrey Adamson.
Aye.
Justin Anderson.
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Aye. All right, next up is the amended budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021.
Now on to the fun stuff. Hey, this is gonna be real quick. because it's not gonna take a lot of time. You saw the you saw the original budget last June. And we're gonna be doing a budget for next year. But really, why do we need an amended budget is to incorporate all the numbers that we got when we closed out the year from the annual financial report. And that was done in October, so it was after, this school year started. But the two big reasons why are ESSER monies, the 1.9 million we got, and then the additional 7.5. We got number 3 coming, but I can deal with that in next year's budget. But we had a lot of expenditures and revenues that weren't identified in the original budget. So that's really the reason we're doing it. Another big reason is a Spire project. And that's, that's a cost that, again, wasn't in the original budget. So this will allow it to be aligned. And I'm a little anal, believe it or not, that I like the new budget coming in with the last numbers that are somewhat factual. So that, and in the meantime, we aligned all the revenues and expenditures that we knew. So this is just like a regular budget. You got to display it for 30 days. Then you can pass it after you have a public hearing. We only have one board meeting between now and then. So the public hearing is gonna be the same night that hopefully you guys approve this. And then we're gonna be right on to the next budget. So you guys got a lot of meeting, this meeting next. This is a chart you always see. And the difference here is the federal revenues are much higher because of the federal funding. Typically it's 7 to 9%. Here it's 17. So it skews everything. Here's a budget that says our operating funds by source. It's the same thing, just federal's gonna be a little higher. You guys all seen this, I'm putting this on the web, so, and I don't know why Brian's computer, this charts are much nicer when you do it on a non-Mac. This is a non-Mac.
That's a Chromebook.
Yeah, Chromebook. So I don't know why they're all on, but on the web they'll be right. These are expenditures by funds. You guys see these all the time, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time. Here's really what I'm gonna tell you. The revenues for the local. We have corporate property replacement tax, which is an allocation that the state gives us. I took time to update those because those are all over the place. The 1% facility tax, remember a year ago, you guys don't, but I'm gonna remind you. Remember a year ago, we said about $3.8 million we get each year. And this year's budget, we estimated at 75% because we didn't know what the economy was gonna do. But fortunate enough, we thought, after reviewing 9 months of it, we're really close to that 3.8. So what does that do? That we didn't budget for $800,000. We normally put $500,000 into type of projects that are preventative, a lot of masonry work and various, boilers and stuff that we can save for efficiencies. So we did that. This year, we didn't budget any initially because we didn't think we had any excess money and we want to make sure we paid the bond. So that might, that's very, very good. The federal, it's all about the CARES funds. You know all about that. And on the revenue side, on the expenditure side, it's obviously we have a lot to do with the expenditures on the 1.9. The 1.9 basically was spent on a lot of temporary labor stuff, just to make sure we had, people in the right places. A lot of the money was for additional subs because we had each building with an additional sub. It was really worried about labor. And then the other was facilities, cleaning products and all that. That was really CARES 1. CARES 2, we're putting teachers out there. We're trying to hire teachers right now. And then also we're trying to do some air conditioning. You guys approved that, but that's really what it is. The other one is Aspire. Now, folks, I didn't outright lie to you, but I am definitely way wrong. When we presented a budget originally of Aspire, that was before the market's just going nuts. We took a good estimated number and we came up with 2.8. I'm gonna tell you folks, that number in today's market is way different than it was just 6 months ago. So I don't want you to be angry with me when I come back, when we get to this point to say, hey, I'm wrong. I'm telling you why we're wrong. The principles we used were sound. we're trying to do what we can for the best of that project, for the needs of those students. It's not gonna be 2.8. So it's no different than the market. You know, if you look at anything with steel or construction, it's just, it's going through the roof. You got people on board that can tell you just as much as me. You're not talking 5% difference, you're talking heights of 15, 20, 30%. So we're going through the process, we're trying to do all our due diligence. But we're in a different market. So I just want you to be aware of that. But we're trying everything we can to hold the line and be responsible for what our charge is. So that's just a heads up for the future. And transportation, obviously I lowered the expenditures because we had a lot of transportation that didn't happen, and the tune of probably $750,000. So, you know, I took the big stuff off of there. The rest, yeah, we got more money, but our deficit, remember when I always tell the seasoned veteran board members, if I have a deficit of $1 million in the ed fund, don't be alarmed. If I have a $2 million deficit, don't be alarmed. I'll tell you when it gets alarmed, we assume every penny's gonna be expended. And when you talk about that in $75 million, 1% of that's $750,000. You know, we budget for teachers, subs extremely high. We budget for stuff on a high end, and we know we're gonna be on the conservative. So just in a happenstance, and the year's not even over, really nothing changed, but that number's more realistic now at a negative. I project it'll probably be a positive. So I'm just saying, budgeting is tough. Budgeting is extremely tough in COVID. Maybe not more than it is any time, but I'll tell you, even though you see a negative, I don't think you have any worries. So in the end, we're in very good financial shape. We will be next month when I share the rest of the financials with you for next year. Will be some assumptions, and I'll be wrong again, but we'll be close. And the other thing is, at the end of this meeting, you have a financial report. We're good to go. If you have questions, you can ask me now about anything or later. I'll be glad to answer anything.
Questions? Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
We appreciate it. Thank you. We have to vote on that, right? All right. The recommended motion is that the board receive the amended budget for the 2021 fiscal year. Place the amended budget on public display and set June 28, 2021 as the date and time of the public hearing to be held at the College Professional Development Room, 3430 Avenue of the City of Illinois, as presented and as listed. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Discussion. We have a roll call, please.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Aye.
Andrew Ware,
Yes.
Audrey Adamson,
Aye.
Justin Anderson,
Aye.
Chet DeSmet,
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith,
Aye. Our next item is the approval of the student teaching clinical agreement. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the student teaching clinical agreement between Augustana College and the Moline-Coal Valley School District for the 2021-2022 school year. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Andrew Ware,
Aye.
Audrey Adamson,
Aye.
Justin Anderson,
Aye.
Chet DeSmet,
Aye.
Maria S. Trigueros, Aaron Waldron Smith,
Aye. The board's requesting Dr. Savage.
Okay, we are actively planning for the next school year, and I'm glad to have tentative plans in place and communicated out already to families so that families, teachers, and staff can know what to expect this fall. I will continue to watch for any new guidance that may come out over the summer, especially as it pertains to health and safety rules, and we'll be sure to share those out right away. The HR department has been busy hiring teachers and staff to add to our professional teams at each school. And we are aggressively gearing up for the academic recovery process and meeting students' social and emotional needs when they come back to us in the fall. Lastly, the application for the Fall District Remote Learning Academy for qualifying students is now open in Skyward. Applying to the Skyward portal is the first step, and returning the medical verification form signed by a licensed physician is the second step toward having the application approved. We will be watching those numbers over the summer and planning accordingly. Lastly, it's hard to believe that we are in our last week of what has been an unprecedented and most challenging school year. We are particularly proud to be able to end on a high note with many positives as we launch into the summer. We are thrilled for the Moline High School bass fishing team and their new state championship title. Students and coaches represented our school, our district, and our community in a stellar way, and we are very proud of them. We are also beyond proud of the class of 2021 and grateful for the ability to recognize and honor their accomplishments with an in-person commencement ceremony at the tax layer this coming Sunday evening at 7 p.m. The ceremony will also be live streamed with a link available on the Moline High School webpage under the Academics tab. We are sad to see our 36 retirees leave us, but want to congratulate them one last time for their service and dedication to kids in the Moline-Coal Valley School District. Together, they leave us with 841 years of service and will be sadly missed. And finally, I'm relieved to be able to end the school year with students attending school 5 days per week. Educating kids is our business, and being together in person is essential. After all of the changes and uncertainty, it is a positive to end the semester having been hybrid for 3 out of the 4 quarters this year. It is a huge testament to the staff, students, families, and all of the community outreach and supports we have received over the last year and a half. Thank you.
Before I go to financial reports, I too would like to thank all of the staff of the administration, Dr. Savage and all of upper administration for all of the work that has been done for this school year. It was a tremendous task with zero guidance that would change whenever it wanted to change on a whim. And I thank you for your tireless effort and work for our students. Dave, you got anything else to say? Okay. Board member committee discussion. I sent you all an email. Is there anyone who has any issue with their committees? Maria, I put you or me for MESTA. Did you have a preference? Okay. All right. And that doesn't need to be approved or anything, correct? No. Okay. Any other discussion? Concerns?
Just, I was wondering in terms of, I guess, graduation and any updates regarding any boards. I know that we can provide you that it's not the traditional way for this weekend. And then also just want to say that project graduation, so obviously thank you for everybody who's supporting that and making that a thing that's happening. And anybody out there who's listening as well is more than welcome to join us to volunteer all night long on Sunday night.
I did have a question about graduation. My name is Gregory. What I know in the past in 2019 we were all there, so much. Is that still just a you know, where we'd like to go, or is
I believe-
tickets, or you know?
I believe there will be a space on the stage for all board members that want to attend.
And I'll be getting the particulars out regarding parking. If you remember last time we had a special spot to start, so I'll get those details and get that sent out to you so you kind of know what to expect on that end.
Just being also mindful, because last time, you know, there was a train. Trains are vicious and Moline, you never know when they're going to appear. So, okay, well, our next item is moving into closed session. We need a motion to go into closed session to consider litigation when an action against trustee or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable and imminent, in which case the bias for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed session. Do I have a motion?
There's another, you gotta do that, Ian.
Oh, and sorry, and to consider collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or the representatives or deliberations considering salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. All in favor? Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right.
All right.
That's all right.